Jeff Gerwich here, retired SF guy. Now this video is all about how and why Special Forces adopted the Glock, specifically the Glock 19 pistol. Now there's a lot of speculation and misinformation floating around on the internet as to how and why we got the Glocks. I'm here to set the record straight. Now this video is not based on research or deep thoughts, on how we got the Glock. It's based on first-hand experience by me because I was there when we first adopted it. So let's go. Now I saw my first issued Glock back in late 2006, early 2007 as an instructor at our primary CQB schoolhouse at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. It was a Gen 3 Glock 19. Now I'm going to be using this G19 as a reference in this video. This of course is not an Army issue, Gen 3 Glock 19. This is my personal Gen 5 Glock 19, but you get the point. Now up until 2006, 2007-ish, our primary sidearm was the M9 Beretta, and if you watch my M1911 in use with Special Forces during the War on Terror, you'll see we were supplemented with World War II Remington Rands within U.S. Army Special Forces, which I used on a couple of tours. But I want to talk about specifically how we got the Glock 19 and why guys wanted it. So late 2006, very early 2007 is when I saw my first Glocks in Special Forces. Now, where did the demand for Glocks, initially come from? Well, one of the main reasons is, of course, Delta, CAG, the unit, whatever they call themselves nowadays, they adopted the Glock 22 in the early 2000s. Of course, that's a Glock in .40 caliber, and SF guys saw that. Of course, we wanted to mimic them, whatever the unit's running, we wanted to run. But I think more importantly is the type of guys coming into Special Forces, they helped push the change and the desire for the Glock. Now, what do I mean by this? My era, I joined SF in 1998, and there were a lot of guys, from the 80s and 90s still in that saw the M1911 as the ultimate fighting pistol. I wanted an M1911 as soon as I graduated the Q course. And that's why there was a huge demand. If you saw my M1911 in Special Forces video, I'll explain why we wanted M1911 so bad. But by the, coming into the mid-2000s, we had younger guys joining SF. We started the 18 X-ray program, so you could join, Special Forces at 21 years old. And, in the early to mid-2000s, Glock was dominating, the U.S. law enforcement and worldwide pistol market. All these law enforcement agencies were going to the Glock. These younger guys were seeing the Glock being used a lot, and in competition, the Glock 34 was dominating what's known as production class in United States Practical Pistol Shooting Association, along with the Glock 17. The XD had just started to come into play. MMPs didn't exist yet, so Glock was a dominating force in competition. So between competition world, police units, some tactical guys outside the military running Glocks, the demand was there, and that's what guys saw was, the Glock is the ultimate gun, and that's how the demand started. So it was probably early 2007 as an instructor, I got my first Glock, a Glock 19, and at the time, I personally wondered, why the heck did we, get a compact or semi-compact gun and not a full-size, Glock 17 like this one right here. It kind of perplexed me at the time. I thought it was kind of dumb because, we're doing a lot of heavy fighting in Afghanistan. 2006, 2007, or 2005, 2006, a lot of heavy fighting in Iraq. Why not have a full-size fighting gun? It just perplexed me why we had, a basically semi-compact gun. It didn't make sense to me. Well, once I learned, with speaking with SF guys who were involved in the procurement process of getting us Glocks, it made sense to me why the Glock 19 was chosen, and this is really what's not out there on the internet besides an article I wrote in defensereview.com a few years back, basically going over exactly how we got Glocks. I'll put a link down in the description, but how we got the Glock 19 is really based on requirements that were written to get us it, meaning that when SF, created this demand for the Glocks, we fall under in U.S. Army Special Forces. Yes, we're under SOCOM, but we're under the Army. And the big Army said you can't have a new pistol because you have the Beretta M9 as your full-size fighting gun. So, you're not going to get a new pistol just for ground combat. You have that. But within Special Forces, we do have certain requirements for other capabilities. And one of those requirements is to have a concealable pistol. So the way to get guys Glocks was to write that requirement literally based around getting us a Glock 19, and at the time it was the Gen 3. The requirements were literally written basically making it, a necessary item to have the Glock 19. Since we could not get a full-size gun because the big army said we already had one, the next best thing was to write the requirement that we had for this concealed carry gun and make the Glock fit it. So basically, that's how we were able to justify getting Glocks to the guys. Kind of just like how the Marines, they wanted an HK piston gun because it's a great gun. So they wrote the requirements to replace, their squad automatic weapons. Even though when you look at how they're employing the M27, it looks like it's, being employed more as a DMR gun, designated marksmanship rifle, than it is a squad automatic weapon. I think they kind of just backdoored as a way to get them the HK piston gun. This is kind of the same way we got the Glock 19s. Again, it's, the requirements. The Army's funny about things. It's unlike the soft mod program, which is a SOCOM initiative. And because it's SOCOM driven and not Big Army driven, it falls strictly under SOCOM. The rifles for the soft mod program, they come out of Crane, Indiana, which is a Navy base. So, that's where the SEALs have their guns and all that. So that's a specific soft SOCOM program for the soft mod and the rifles and optics, all that. The Glock 19 was a specific U.S. Army Special Forces requirement, and that's why U.S. Army Special Forces got the Glock 19 first. Now, the only problem with getting the Glock 19 this way was, it was because it's a supplement. It did not mean a Glock for every guy in the force, only for units that had a concealed carry or, low-vis capability carrying the guns. So basically what that meant was, every SF unit got some Glock 19s, but there was never enough for one for every man. So the result of this is the Glocks were, generally rotated around within Special Forces units to guys who were deploying downrange and needed them. So a lot of these guns just saw nothing but back-to-back deployments in Afghanistan. Even though they weren't used as a concealed carry gun, they were, used more as a general use duty gun. That's why if you look in the photos, they were in drop leg ALS holsters. A lot of them have extended mag walls on them. Guys ran full-size Glock 17 mags, even extended mags. Anything they could do to get this to be more like a full-size fighting handgun than, as a, compact, semi-compact, concealable gun. That's how it was actually being employed, really, is full-blown duty use, in the mountains of Afghanistan and, the streets of Iraq and such. Now, of course, going into 2015, the Navy decided to finally give up their Mark 23s, that dismally large HK pistol, and their SIG guns. And they adopted the Glock 19 also, and that leads into 2016, where the Marines adopted the Glock and replaced their M1911s, because basically by 2016, SOCOM had said, okay, the Glock 19 is going to be our, sidearm, our official sidearm. So again, in the procurement process, every man in SF and in SOCOM was able to get Glocks, because in 2016 it became an official SOCOM-wide program. Everybody's going to get a Glock 19 as their sidearm, so SF does not need the Berettas anymore. Now, backtrack to 2015, which is the time of my last combat tour in Afghanistan. Because SOCOM had not fully adopted it yet, we still didn't have enough Glocks for every man on the team. We went plussed up into Afghanistan with 14 guys in the team. I think we had 8 or 9 Glock 19s on the team at that time. That's why I ran a 1911 for part of the missions. The rest of the time I ran a Beretta, and some other guys were forced to run the Beretta. So we still didn't have enough Glocks, one for every guy. Now, when SOCOM in 2016 decided to, pick up the Glock 19 for all of SOCOM and special operations, they also added the requirement that it be red dot capable. So at that same time period, they also adopted the Trijicon RMR and the Delta Point Pro as mini red dot sights for the gun. Now, the way the requirement was initially written for the Gen 3 Glock 19, that's why you see the Gen 3 frame still being used, even though it has a modern, MOS Glock slide, because the requirement specified basically that gun at the time, and the red dot capability was just an additional requirement put on top of the gun when they purchased it for SOCOM wide. They didn't write the requirement for a whole new gun. It's almost like starting over. So that is why, in SOCOM, the Gen 3 is still the platform that they're getting these, Glock 19s issued as. If anything, they're keeping the company grip force adapters in business, because a lot of guys, including myself, especially with the Glock 19, I get slide bite in the web of my hand using a Glock without this big beaver tail. So like even on my Gen 3 Glock 17 here, I have a grip force adapter so I don't get that slide bite. If you noticed in a lot of the photos I posted here, a lot of guns have that grip force adapter. So if anything, Special Operations and SOCOM is keeping that gun in business, since SF guys generally aren't getting Gen 4 and Gen 5 Glocks. Now, there are other programs that have certain requirements within Special Forces. There was a deep cover pistol requirement. That's how, in SF, there's some Glock 43s. And in the CRIF, which is the Commander's Response Force, basically a hostage rescue anti-terrorism force whose primary mission is CQB, they did get full-size Glock 17s in around 2017. I talked to a buddy of mine who's a member of that unit. A lot of those guys prefer the Delta Point Pro over the Trijicon RMR. They said, they can see it better and pick it up better. Now, personally, if I was called back to active duty, I would probably not run a red dot on a pistol. I don't feel the need for it. I'm fine with just rocking iron sights. I can hit a man-sized target out to 25 yards. But if I were in this particular unit whose primary job is hostage rescue, they have to be able to rise the occasion at any time, to take that classic shot of, a terrorist holding a hostage in a headlock, and getting a headshot on that terrorist in a no-fail situation. So if I was in that type of unit, I would consider, running a red dot on my pistol. Now, I know the question will come up down in the comments, what do I think about, the M17, M18, the SIG pistol that the Army adopted, against a Glock. Regardless of performance-wise, in U.S. Army Special Forces, the primary mission is to train, advise, and lead other nations' forces. And, Glock is a worldwide product. Tons of militaries run Glocks, and more often than not, when you're working with a partner military force from another country, there's a good chance to run a Glock as a pistol. So regardless of what people think of the SIG, if it's a better gun or Glocks are just okay, it makes sense to run the same weapon systems as the soldiers that you may be teaching or leading. And again, there's a good chance a lot of these SF teams, when they work with partner forces, those partner forces have Glocks. Heck, back in 2004, when we were re-standing up the Iraqi police, our government bought them Glock 19s, and we were still running around brand M9s, so we felt a little cheated there. But that just shows how prevalent our Glocks are around the world. So it just makes sense for special operations to stay, with Glocks no matter what, the rest of the Army adopts. Now, what would I like to see in the future? I would like to see SOCOM, rewrite the requirements to get these guys modern Gen 5 Glocks. The Gen 5 Glock, like my Glock 19 right here. Now this one has the finger cutout, which doesn't bother me, but they stopped doing it on their guns. The Gen 5 has a way better stock trigger that comes in the gun, has a flared magazine well, and overall I think it's right now the current ultimate Glock. So I'd like to see SOCOM adopt that, interchangeable back straps, that way you'll fit guys' hands better. This to me is a great gun. If I had my choice, I'd get Glock 45s for everybody. So there you have it. That is the history of the Glock 19 within Special Forces and how we got it. Again, we had a specific requirement for a, carry gun, low levels, we call it in Special Forces, basically plain clothes or civilian clothes. And we were able to make that requirement or fit the Glock 19 around that requirement as basically a loophole to get us Glocks because guys wanted them. And of course, they were put to use in full-blown combat and in every other scenario where guys needed a pistol. But that is why and how we got it and the history of the Glock 19. I hope you enjoyed this video. You found it entertaining and informative. As always, I'm Jeff Gerwich, and thanks for watching. Real quick, I want to mention my modern tactical shooting courses. Basically, I'm running a thing called the Day at the Range here in North Carolina. My next class is December 11th. It's a rifle pistol course. It is currently booked full, but I'll be resuming courses in February. You can check it out on my social media. I'm on Facebook, Modern Tactical Shooting, Instagram, Modern_Tactical. I will be launching a website probably in January, February-ish to match my training, but you can come train with me starting in 2022.